Hello everyone, and I am so excited for our interview today. I am in Manchester, Vermont, and about to chat with a wonderful person who I'm really excited to chat with because he is not only an entrepreneur that I deeply respect, but also participated in the first ever mastermind. So we are actually in his co-working space right now, and I'm gonna get out of the frame and get him into the chair so that we can have a fun conversation. How excited are you for this interview?
Very excited.
How excited on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, at least a 9.9.
Amazing. Okay, great. So, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who the heck are you?
I'm Will Drucker. I founded Split Spirits, and we make sustainable spirits with a sense of place. So what that means is we essentially take ingredients from a particular spot that involves grain and wood. We distill that grain into whiskey and then infuse it with the different types of wood to capture flavors from that particular spot. And
So good.
it's fun. It's really fun.
So good. And Split Spirits is definitely not just a way you make money, it's an expression of who you are and what you value. So tell our viewers how you've managed to quote unquote bottle, I was really proud of that pun, who you are and what you love into this brand.
Yeah, it's funny. If someone had asked me when I graduated college 15 years ago, would I have started a craft whiskey brand, and the answer would be like, well, that would be cool, but probably not. Mm-hmm. Sustainability has been the through line for pretty much everything I've done, but in hindsight, Split Spirits really does a pretty remarkable job of combining a lot of the things I love, whether they're meeting interesting people, doing something with my hands, doing something for the environment, travel and the cuisine and flavors associated with different places that I travel. And so it all sort of wove together really nicely, and the result is Split Spirits.
And one of the reasons I love entrepreneurship is that owning a business allows you to take a stand for something, and Split Spirits definitely seems to do that. What purpose do you hope it serves as the company grows?
Yeah, so I think that'll change over time as we grow and we continue to do the work that I think is necessary for all businesses to do. Most recently, we helped our partner distillery, Appalachian Gap, up in Middlebury, Vermont, become the country's first climate neutral certified distillery. So that makes Split Spirits, the first climate neutral certified brand, which is really exciting, especially given the pressing need for addressing climate change, and needs to happen on all fronts, internationally, nationally, within business communities, within communities of faith, within individual homes. And it just made sense to take that step. And the partners I work with, and we'll get into that a little later, just had this environmental ethos that drew me to them in the first place. So it's just doing the right thing was always kind of the MO. And one of the ways that manifests for Split Spirits that I am particularly excited about is the intersection of farming, grains, and whiskey, because there's such a huge opportunity for us to address the climate change issue through farming with regenerative methods, using organic methods that build soil fertility, sequester carbon, and it's good for farmers. They can command a higher price for their grain, and it's really fun to be able to purchase that and turn it into a product that I love and our fans love. So it's really fun to be able to actually be physically doing the work, on that end.
And let's talk more about becoming climate neutral certified. What exactly does that mean, and why is it important?
Yeah, so everyone hopefully is familiar with the idea of global warming, climate change, and this climate neutral certification basically is a way for us to work with a third party to evaluate our entire footprint, our carbon footprint, and that's everything from our upstream supply chain, so where we get the grains, how those grains come from the farms to our distillery, the bottles that we purchase, basically taking into account the full carbon impact of everything we do, from the buying the raw materials, making Split Spirits, and then sending them on to shops in New York or San Francisco or here in Vermont. And accounting for those, so they have a really user-friendly business emission estimator that for a small company like us we don't need to hire experts to do this stuff, so we can get a really robust idea of the carbon impact of various aspects of our business, and come up with a final number that we can then work to winnow down and then purchase offsets for what we can't directly control. So like the truck that brings the grain to the facility, we can't ask them to, please use an electric truck next time, because we can't control that directly. Hopefully we'll get to that point, and that's one of the things I think is most exciting about the climate neutral brand, is that it's more public facing as more people see it. Hopefully, it'll just raise awareness about, oh gosh, this thing I never really thought about in terms of its impact on the climate. It has X footprint, and it's, the supply chain impact is huge. And gosh, as more and more businesses do that, and people, become more aware, hopefully, using an electric truck fleet is a reality in the future. So that's how I think, the business community in particular can really help move the needle on this issue, and do so in a way that deepens relationships with customers, because they know you're trying to do the right thing, and it's a great story to tell, and it's just, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. So
I love that. If someone were to say, hey, how can your whiskey business help stop global warming, now there's an answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful. So you've done an amazing job creating a beautiful, cohesive Instagram presence. I went on it again last night to try to make you some graphics for this interview, and then realized that I could not make graphics cool enough to be on your Instagram page. What advice would you give to someone that's building their own social media identity?
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning, I will say, but I think the thing that has just felt the most right, and is reinforced by people responding or engaging or appreciating what we're putting out, is just our story and the way we see it. And some of our posts are a little bit more long-winded, but it's because we care, and we don't post a whole lot, and that's maybe not a great strategy, but it's just what works for us. And we see that as just another way for us to tell not only the story of how we make split spirits, what makes it unique, but taking a step back and like, where does this fit within the broader world? Like, why does this matter from an environmental standpoint, from a sense of place standpoint? How do we help people really appreciate something just that might be right under the nose, the wonder that's really surrounds us wherever we are, whether it's exploring, looking for birds in Prospect Park, or hiking through the Adirondacks or the Green Mountains here in Vermont. So I think just being genuine, asking your followers, the people that engage with you most, like what they care about. That's something that we want to work on more, just making sure that what we're sharing with our fans is something they really care about. And it's not social media specific, but we have a newsletter, and I was actually just going over this with my colleague who helps with a lot of this social media outreach, and we were looking at the click rates on our various links in the newsletter, and we were really pleasantly surprised that one of the things that people click on most we include 3 songs at the end of our newsletter, and it doesn't really have anything to do with whiskey. It's just like songs that we've listened to in the past month or two that we just really like, and like, oh, we should share this with people. And it's fun to see that people like scroll, hopefully read all the way through, and then click on the 3 kind of random songs that we include in our newsletter. And initially we were like, oh, is this too off brand? And it's a nice affirmation that no, it's like, you can just do you, and people love it. It's better than trying to force something that's not natural. So that's sort of been our guiding principle.
You knew who your ideal clients would be, even from the very beginning. There are people a lot like you that love sustainability, that love the environment, that love the outdoors, and apparently love music. And I guess that's one of the benefits of having customers that you would want to hang out with in general.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I would definitely like to think that like I would hang out with any of my customers, because usually there's some aspect of what they find interesting that I find interesting, that there's a connection point. It doesn't have to be regenerative grains, or it doesn't have to be travel, it doesn't have to be whiskey necessarily. Like the thing that I like about it is that there's so many aspects and layers to it that someone is going to pick up on something, whether it's just the design of the bottle and people want to talk about, what fonts did you use? Like, what was your design process like? To be able to get into the details like that with someone, even on an aspect of the brand that's, maybe just like a minute part of it. And I think that's the other thing I like, is that I'm always sometimes surprised at who is, a fan, It's not necessarily someone who looks like me or, has my life experience. It's someone who comes at it, from a different angle and appreciates something that we're doing. And so it's sort of like an in a way, to communities I haven't necessarily spent as much time with or that I would expect to be fans of Split Spirits. So
fun.
It's very fun.
Yeah, you start with your ideal client, but then if other folks want to become huge fans of the brands, you embrace them along with it.
Yeah.
You
It's
never
a two-way
know.
street.
Yeah.
For sure.
Strategic partnerships have been key to building your business. Tell us about a few of the strategic partnerships that you have and how they've helped you grow.
Yeah, I would say probably the most tangible partnership is the one I have with Appalachian Gap Distillery. They are the partners where I produce all the Split Spirits. And basically what that means is, they have an established distillery with all the equipment, the places where all the grain is fermented, the grinder, the stills, etc. And I found them because I had done a road trip through Vermont, because I was originally going to be based in New York, and I was looking for a distillery that made a Vermont whiskey with Vermont grown grains that I really enjoyed, an unaged whiskey that I could use as the base for my Split Vermont. And toured a bunch of distilleries, tasted a bunch of their new make or unaged whiskey, and tried Appalachian Gap Snowfall. I was like, wow, this is really good. It's clean, it's crisp, it has flavor, has texture. And so I reached out to them and just told them what I was doing. It's sort of an unusual approach to spirits and whiskey and whatnot. And they were into it, and it just kind of jived with their ethos. They're very experimental. They're open to sort of breaking norms and going outside the lane, so to speak, to find interesting flavors. And so we definitely jived on that point. When I drove into the distillery, there were 6 huge solar panels. I was like, all right, cool, I like this vibe. And so it kind of developed organically from there, where I was based in New York at that point, taking prototypes of my Split Spirits around to bars and restaurants to see whether it was even something that people would be interested in. And they're like, hey, do you want to help sell our Vermont craft spirits in New York? I was like, sure, I'm going to these places anyway. I like what you do. Like, let's do it. So it helped me, provided me a platform to, really accelerate that outreach and develop that community in New York. And to this day, we have some of those are still some of our best customers. And I was just back in New York last week. I'm going back next week to do tastings and events and stuff. And it's so that was helped it was a springboard for really helping launch the brand in a lot of ways. I have lots of friends and advisors who are more informal partners, so to speak, that I reach out to because they have different expertise. And also my wife, Kristen, has been just like a completely amazing and supportive partner literally in this journey, just trusting me and seeing my vision and supporting me, helping, late nights edit newsletters and come up with concepts and helping with aspects of the design. And so she definitely gets a lot of the credit as well. Yeah.
I want to talk more about strategic partnerships, but first, you brought up 2 really great points. You were so amazing about taking your product to various bars, having people try it. That can be really scary for an entrepreneur that's starting a business, to really talk to their potential customers. Where'd you find the courage to do that?
I think it was really just by dint of how the whole concept of Split Spirit started. It was something that my friends almost urged me to do. I was experimenting. I sort of latched onto this idea that, gosh, every whiskey I've ever had is basically a variation on flavors from one tree, white oak, grown in one part of the world, Missouri. That's where all the barrels come from. And there's some great whiskey out there, but I was just, once I learned that, I was so fascinated to see what other flavors were out there, whether they're in, white oak grown in different parts of the country, and see if there was like a terroir effect, or for that matter, other species of wood altogether. And so I basically just started experimenting and prototyping, and my apartment had just rows of little glass spice jars that I had filled with different types of wood and unaged whiskey, just to see what they would taste like, and people would come over and ask what I was doing, and was I turning this into a business? And I got a lot of feedback from people. They would pick one and they'd try it, and like enough people were into the idea and liked the flavors that was ultimately what gave me the courage to then take it to a wine shop or a spirit shop and get someone's professional opinion about it. And not everyone loved it, but that's okay. Like, I don't have to please everyone, but enough people were intrigued with the concept, like the story, like that it was just doing something that really had never been done before. And enough people give you positive feedback like that, it's it helps a lot with going to the next shop. And no guaranteed the next shop owner will have time, give you the time of day, but you have that bank of positive feedback that you can fall back on. So
yeah.
Plus I was passionate about it. I was like, I made it, and it was a passion project, and I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah, the persistence, being willing to knock on the doors, being willing to discover passion, starting with your own community and like seeing how they respond to it. There's so many great tidbits in what you just shared.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll mention there is the fact that it was like a dialogue. I wasn't bringing them a final product. I was bringing them something in a mason jar with like a hand-drawn label and being like, hey, what's good about this? What's bad about this? What would you like to see, or what would your customers like to see? So it was very much a learning thing. So it didn't feel like I was coming there to sell them something. It was like, hey, help me figure this out. And so they were part of the story, part of the process, and enough people were excited to give me their feedback that felt very very holistic in that regard.
And they became some of your first customers too, right?
Yeah, still are.
Yeah. So getting people involved early. And I didn't realize that you took mason jars to these wine shops. That is, I'm surprised people drank it, honestly.
You'd be surprised what wine shop owners will try. They usually spit it out. So otherwise, it'd be tough to get through their day.
So to return back to this question of strategic partnerships. What advice would you give to someone who's also interested to grow their business in that way?
Yeah, I would say I think there's this prevailing notion in the world of entrepreneurship that you have to protect your idea. And I think while you need to make sure that your idea is unique enough that it's defensible, but at the end of the day, like, good ideas get stolen all the time, and that's an indication that it's a good idea. And so recognizing that fact and recognizing that growth can happen quicker with more people involved and people from different perspectives or with different expertise, like, find those people. Don't try to be in your own little nucleus, because how are you going to grow a business if you're just insular like that? And so finding people, whether it's to help share your story, be a brand rep or whatever, or in the case of the distillery, lean on their expertise. They know how to make an amazing distilled spirit, and to do it sustainably. There are strategic partnership opportunities everywhere. Like, one of the ones I'd like to lean into more is working with the farmers we do. I acknowledge them, but I would love to get to the point where, instead of me asking, oh, I need, XYZ grains, I want them to tell me, hey, Will, my fields really thrive when I'm planting this combination of grains. Like, could you make a whiskey out of that? And like, if you're not open to that type of opportunity, or you're too focused on having something be, unchanging, then you're not going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. So I think, the more you can share your idea, sure, don't give away everything, but don't be afraid to let people in that, you might view as a potential competitor, or, there's so much opportunity to build something better together. That's no amazing company is ever run by one person. Like, you need a team, and whether those team members are, within your organization or external, really important. So, yeah.
What's your vision for Split Spirits? Where would you like the company to be in 5 years?
Yeah, so it's funny, I was just looking back at my mastermind vision for Split Spirits, and I want Split Spirits to grow to a scale where I'm providing good jobs for people. That's something that's an issue here in Vermont. It's an aging state, and there aren't enough attractive jobs for young people to move here or to stay here. So the idea of being able to, create meaningful employment for people and, help them fulfill their life goals from a job standpoint, that would be incredibly fulfilling to me. And you really see it. I live in a small town, and like you can see how the business community supports people's livelihoods and how they're integrated, and it's neat once you boil it down to just like the scale of a small town to really see how everything knits together. From a sustainability standpoint, I would love to get to the point I just alluded to it a moment ago in terms of working more closely with farmers, but I really want to get to the point where other distilleries and other brands are copying what I'm doing, and they're paying more for organic regenerative grains, because right now, unfortunately, we rely on GMO conventional corn for most whiskey, and that is not helping the climate crisis. That's in fact inflaming the issue, but there's an opportunity to help make progress on climate change by shifting what sort of farms you support, whether they're ones that are building soil fertility, soil health, sequestering carbon. So I'd love to get to the point where other brands call me up, say, hey, Will, can you put me in touch with your farmer? I don't want to be like protective about that. I want my farmer Tor or John to get more business and have to lease more land and have to convert more acres to regenerative organic farming because this other distillery wants to get in. So seeing it as a platform for helping industry shift and just raising more awareness about the climate issue. And I'd like to think that all of that, if we get to that scale, that there's a financial goal there too, where it gets to the point where it's providing myself and my family a healthy, comfortable livelihood, and similar for the employees that are working with me. So yeah.
I like how big you smile when you talk about that.
5 years, we'll see. Check back in.
Love it. So let's change gears. Some of the people watching this interview are interested in my upcoming business mastermind. What was the experience of this year-long program like for you?
Yeah, so I think you just alluded to it a moment ago in terms of the vision, just really, first of all, coming up with like, what is it you want to do? And that can be so powerful no matter what you're doing, whether you're starting a business, whether you're trying to commit to something in your life, whether you're trying to learn a new skill, just get better at what you're already doing. I think really coming up with a clear vision and really breaking that vision down into, like what are the steps to get me to that vision, and coming up with structure, accountability, support networks, which is absolutely part of the mastermind, to help support you in that journey of just like slowly but surely, methodically getting towards that vision. And because sometimes it can be really daunting, and to have a group of people who know your vision, know your plan, and support you and hold you accountable to that plan is really powerful. Another thing that's really helpful, I find, is that having people that aren't in your industry or don't think about the same things you do every day is really helpful. That diversity of perspective and opinion can help you look at a problem you're having from a totally fresh perspective and have you see it in a new light. And especially when you're a solopreneur or small business owner, that's helpful, because otherwise you're just thinking of all these things in your own head, and you may be a good problem solver, but like I was alluding to before, teams are helpful, whether that's your mastermind group or your colleagues or whatnot. We can't do anything great just on our own.
How specifically did it support your business growth?
Yeah, so in terms of the plan, just really breaking down, not only creating that clear vision of where we want to be in 5 years, that like big inspirational thing that gets you up in the morning or gets you keeps you up late when you're trying to plow through some work. The thing that I really struggled with was taking that vision and breaking it down into incremental steps and creating a plan and having an accountability structure in place where those little incremental baby step things that might seem insignificant or might be easy to let slide for a day or two, be reminded within that accountability structure that they all lead up to that big vision over the long term. And so to have that structure and that accountability network really was really powerful.
What were a few of the accomplishments you felt most proud of during the program?
I mean, one of the biggest ones was seeing my product on a shelf, like having it go from just a concept to, oh my gosh, that is like the thing that I conceived of and sketched and prototyped. I've gotten the permits, I've done all the boring regulatory stuff, and worked on those partnerships to create an actual thing that someone that I don't know is going to walk into the shop and say, oh, what's that? Oh, that's cool, I want to buy that. And to have that, to get to that point was pretty cool. And the mastermind group was, there's, as you can imagine, there's so many different moving parts to getting to that one occasion that we workshopped, and there was accountability around, and there were plans around, and so it seems like such a discrete, simple thing to have it be available on a shelf, but there's a lot that led up to it. And to be able to do that with the support of the group, but also it was something that we could all celebrate together too. I mean, just that was a big part of it, is celebrating the wins, and to be able to celebrate that moment with the group was pretty amazing.
Last question. What advice would you give someone who's going into the mastermind?
I would say, be open, be vulnerable, be ready to push your own boundaries, because I think that's where the biggest growth can happen, in terms of if you have something you're working on, an issue, or that you need help with. I think it's pretty normal for people to sort of not be super willing to share that issue and really break down what they need support around. And but if that's the perspective you bring into the group, then you're not going to get that support. So that was something that I actively worked on, and I think something I took away is really trust yourself and be honest about what you need, and practice putting that into words and asking for help around it, because those are the things that get us stuck up, and that's where we need help. And so to be able to get to the point where you're comfortable, especially if it's a group of people you've never met, or you don't have necessarily a shared background, right? Because people are going to come from all sorts of walks of life and, perspectives, and that can sometimes feel like you're out of place, and just be comfortable with that and recognize that that is good. And in fact, those different perspectives and the questions are going to push you to do better and work through those issues and, achieve more quickly and have more fun doing it. So I would say that's probably my advice.
Well, it has been such a joy to interview you. I love what Split Spirits is doing. I'm so honored to have been a small part of it. And thanks for sharing with us.
Cheers, indeed.